It's great to see you all out there. We have a subject tonight, which is self-esteem, a spiritual perspective. When you read this title in our convocation leaflet, please understand that we're not competing with the psychotherapists or professionals. They have their role in life, and a very much needed one in this day and age. I think you all will agree with that. So we're going to speak tonight strictly from a spiritual perspective. Dr. Nathaniel Branden said, "Self-esteem pertains to the experience of being competent to cope with the challenges of life and being deserving of happiness. It entails self-trust and self-respect. I cannot think of a single psychological problem that is not traceable to the problem of a poor self-concept. Of all the judgments we pass, none is as important as the one we pass on ourselves. Self-concept tends to be destiny. Positive self-esteem is a cardinal requirement of a fulfilling life." That is a lot to be said, isn't it? And it covers so many subjects that we hear about constantly, day in and day out, in our world today. It's a cardinal requirement, actually, of a successful life. And this doesn't pertain really to the ego. We might think it does, but it does not. In Sanskrit, siddha means successful one. And a siddha is one who has God realization. Actually, we're talking about something that is native to our soul, to all that we are, that which is natural to our very being. Now, as you all can see, this is a very complex subject, isn't it? Very, very broad. Let us go over some of the basic principles. One of them, Brother Nandamoy discussed in his lecture on Tuesday night, and that is the goal are the goals of life. Because when people are depressed or in a negative frame of mind, they're full of hate or fear. It simply means that their energies are being directed improperly, that their energies are being channeled in the wrong direction. I'm sure you all have had the experience of finding yourselves upset about something, and suddenly you discover that, and you realize that all those emotions are creating within you certain very troublesome and unwanted reactions. A counselor said, after many years of listening to troubled people, there is one problem that is so outstanding that he calls it the basic human sickness. It is the problem of the person who is living far below his potential, and he knows it. As a result, he's deeply unhappy, but he can't seem to do anything about it. Well, such souls might think, well, I'm not getting anywhere. And a friend says, well, where do you want to go? And he's likely to say, well, I really don't know. The friend might ask, what do you do best? Oh, nothing in particular. He doesn't know what he does best, doesn't know what he likes. Not very good at anything, he says. And the friend says, well, what do you find is satisfying to you? And he says, nothing in particular. Now I ask you, is this familiar to you? You just reacted. Very nicely, I might add. We're all people, aren't we? Human beings, each with the same basic problems, to one degree or the other, that we can be sure. Our Gurudev Paramahansa Yogananda tests us a great deal, looking for those areas in which we need more experience, areas that we need to face within ourselves. So these are very important questions to ask ourselves. Well, in such instances, and I am afraid I've told some of you this, it's good for a person to go home, sit down. I always advise getting a pad of paper with lines. Get a large black pen and begin to think deeply about what you want to do in life. Write it down. This is only a means of getting started. It's a means of action. Sometimes people call us on the phone and they say, I don't know what to do. I'm having a terrible time. And I often say, well, you've done one thing. You've called. You've taken action of some kind. So the idea is to take simple, short steps toward formulating one's hidden, innermost thoughts. That is what we want to do first. Find out what we're thinking, how we feel. Master has said to us, remember that when you are unhappy, it is generally because you do not visualize strongly enough the great things that you definitely want to accomplish in life. Nor do you employ steadfastly enough your willpower, your creative ability, and your patience until your dreams are materialized. And there you have the whole formula. I often think that we sometimes tend to forget how to have fun of finding ways to solve our problems, being creative in our thinking. Master said, if you have a thought, pay attention to it. Don't just think, oh, that's immaterial. Why did I think that? It doesn't pertain to my problem, but it just might. So don't overlook any possible solutions, because your intuition may be working, hopefully. And Master also said, spiritual success comes by understanding the mystery of life. You know, I often have people say to me, well, I don't know what God wants me to do. How can I know? I have this problem, that problem, and another. Well, it's His mystery. It's His Leela. Don't worry about it. Just consider that He's hiding from you that solution, waiting to see if you will discover it for yourself. And have fun and enjoy searching for the solution. Creativity. Not being bound, remaining flexible, but at the same time stable in your way of being. If you can't see where to go, wait. God will tell you in His own time, but you must trust Him and believe in Him. Animals have a preset goal. They're limited to self-preservation instinctively and procreation. in order that they may come according to the evolutionary pattern that God has set before them. Well, man also has a preset goal. Why? Because man is made in the image of God. And so, logically, that goal is what? Self-realization, God-realization. But what's happened to that goal? Well, we might say that man's attention has been diverted from this goal by the power of Maya or delusion, by involvement with outer happenings. Now, it's the fact that we have to play a role in life, in this drama in which He's placed us. There's no question about that. So we have to have an outer goal or goals in life. But because of the power, blinding power of Maya, those goals usually become the purpose in man's life. He stops at that point. Instead of using them as a part of his discipline in order to find God, discipline to develop his innate faculties, his real self, such as willpower, perseverance, concentration, loyalty, and so forth, they become an end to man's striving and to his endeavors. And that's not the purpose of the problems of life. So this is the first thing we have to do. We have to establish the main goal in life, and that is God realization. Now, all of us know this, don't we? To a greater or lesser extent, without question. But what do we do about it? Intellectually, we tend often to work things out just on the intellectual plane, but that is not enough. Intellect is only an instrument. The evening before Master's Mahasamadhi, he said, "The desire for God, no one can give that to you. You have to cultivate it yourself." So we have work to do, and no one can do it for us. I said this again and again during some of our retreat classes. The Lord has so designed us in such a way that no one can speak for us, no one can think for us, eat food, walk, think, sleep. All these things we must do for ourselves. So it's not enough to say, I want to find God, or I want to be happy, or I want to be healthy. The thing is, we have to work to define clearly, visualize what it is we really do want. That is, we have to give thought to these things, and we must work on them, and then act. Master said, you do not visualize strongly enough. This is to repeat what he said. The great things that you definitely want to accomplish in life. Sometimes when I talk to people, I'll say to them, you have to go after the Lord. You have to bang your fist on the table and say, Lord, I will not have it this way. And they look at me thinking, my goodness, is that the way to God? Well, I'll tell you one thing, he pays attention when you do that. I know. So just as you work to define that main goal, or that inner goal of self-realization. You must do the same with the outer goals of life. You must visualize and clearly define what you want. Even if you think you don't want, know what you want. Start, act, and do. And you will see that one thing comes to you after the other, in its own time and in its own way. You have not, in a way, to seek it, because it is there within you. It is found that man is somewhat like a bicycle, which maintains its balance only if it's going forward. We are engineered, you might say, as goal-searching mechanisms, and feel lost unless we have a goal that interests us. Find something that is worthwhile. That is an inbuilt part of us, and we must honor that. Again, it has nothing to do with the ego. It has to do with who you are, what you are, and where you want to go in life, what you want to achieve, what you want to be. So if we don't honor this, we're miserable. We don't live according to our inherent nature, our God-given nature. You might say the God within us becomes unhappy and displeased. So now, once that goal is set and ever kept in mind, there is nothing that prevents us from moving quickly toward that goal. And it's interesting too, because when you get up a little momentum, you see how the forces work with you, that you might move ahead, accomplishing things more easily than you ever dreamed, and perhaps more than you thought you ever could do. There is our bad karma, of course. We've created that in the past, and having created it, then we have the power to overcome it if we do our part. Master has said, God has given us more than enough power to overcome all the trials and shortcomings of our lives. And we mustn't forget that. We must employ that God-given potential. So there really is nothing that can prevent us from moving toward our goals, and quickly, unless we ourselves work against our own success. And do you realize that most of us do in one way or another? We do it consciously or unconsciously. And one of the greatest obstacles is negative thinking. And as I've said before, all our energies have to be directed toward that main positive goal. All our energies, that is, all our faculties, all our powers must be directed one-pointedly toward our goals. And the most powerful of those is the power of the mind. We've heard our ministers say, and Master has written this, thoughts are things. Thoughts have substance, light, motion, energy. Because everything that exists in our world is made of materialization of thought. And you're all familiar with the biblical quotation, as a man thinketh, so is he. So we have to consider that we often use that power of thought against ourselves, against reaching the goals that we've set before us. One of the psychologists has said that negative thinking is the common cold of psychological disorders. And almost everyone has it at one time or the other. And every year we know that millions of dollars are spent in this country on medicines in the hope of getting rid of depressions, the symptoms of stress, and so on. You're probably familiar with Dr. David Burns' book, Feeling Good. That book was reviewed in our Self-Realization magazine not too long ago. And he says, after extensive research and experiments, that most depression arises, they found, from erroneous thinking, and that we have it within our power to control those thoughts that lead us into needless gloom. I must tell you, I do hand it to these doctors today. They've had quite a lot to learn. They're still learning a lot. But how wonderful it is that they too have discovered the power of positive thinking, right thinking. There's nothing more therapeutic than that, nothing more healing. And Dr. Burns said also, our moods don't decree our thoughts. It's the other way around. Our thoughts govern our moods. Therefore, if you think right, you will feel right. Well, this is exactly what Master teaches. And there are examples that we can use for this. If you seize, take hold of a negative fragment of a situation and dwell on it, it's like wearing a special lens that filters out the positive. And you soon conclude that everything is negative because that's all you're seeing. Well, we have magnification and minimization. And Dr. Burns called this the binocular trick. He said, because you're either blowing things up or shrinking them out of proportion, you look at your imperfections through binoculars and magnify them. Have you ever done that? But when you think of your strengths, do you know what you do? You look through the other end of the binoculars and shrink everything. Dr. Burns said, if a famous visitor came to stay with you, would you insult him? Would you peck away at his weaknesses and imperfections? Well, I hope you won't do that. You would do everything in your power to make your guest feel comfortable. And he said, now why not treat yourself like that? And do it all the time. Quite a message, isn't it? So many of us are not nice to ourselves. Well, we see from this that it is not only the symptoms of depression that we're concerned about, but negation. We think in terms, I'm no good, I won't succeed, I'm not spiritual enough, I am a failure. For many people, the word failure becomes, well, you might say, it carries with it a sense of finality. We're creating this situation for ourselves. We stamp ourselves with this word, failure. But for the successful person, failure is a new beginning, the springboard to renewed effort. You know, I think lots of times in life, we don't have enough experience. We become timid about things before we learn how to be bold about them. A Mr. William Smithberg, who's the chairman of Quaker Oats Company, said to his employees, "There isn't one senior manager in this company who hasn't been associated with a product that flopped." I love that word, flop. That includes me. It is like learning to ski. If you're not falling down, you're not learning. You've got to know as much about falling down as standing up. Isn't it true? How can you be a good skier if you don't know that? So there is a certain amount of involvement in learning, you might say, both sides and being totally unafraid. Some years ago, a promising young executive in the IBM company lost several $1 million because of some misjudgments. And the founder of IBM called him into his office and said to him, well, I guess when he entered, the young man said, "I guess you want my resignation." And the older man said, "Are you kidding? You can't be serious. We've just spent millions of dollars educating you." Now, you have to bear in mind that your boss may not be this kind of person. He may not have that right kind of attitude, but your real boss does. And do you know who that is? God has a great attitude. You should have seen Masters. Reflected divinity. We've all heard about people who have, who could do all sorts of things under hypnosis that they ordinarily couldn't do. And we ask ourselves, why? How is this possible? Well, a psychologist, F.W.H. Myers, who's quoted in Master's autobiography, found that talents and abilities displayed by people under hypnosis were due to a purgation of memory of past failures. In other words, they weren't conscious of their past failures while they were under hypnosis. And so they could do marvelous things. So why can't we in our wakeful state, use this same power to purge the memory from ignoring, so it will ignore past failures and replace those with constructive patterns, new and positive ones. Usually, if we've had some kind of experience that has bothered us, if we have to go through a similar one, we're afraid, aren't we? Because the pattern has been established. But we must purge the memory of those patterns. Everyone has memories of past failures, of mistakes. And as Sri Yukteswar said, the past of all men is dark with many shames. Now, these negative experiences do not inhibit, but contribute to the learning process. We need them. We need them. Otherwise, we never know that we are making mistakes. And as long as they're properly used and seen as deviations from the goals that we desire, then we change our thoughts about them consciously. Edison said to a discouraged co-worker during a trying series of experiments that didn't work, he said, "We haven't failed. we now know 1,000 things that won't work. So we are that much closer to our solution. I think that's great. We have to be very industrious to be like Edison. So the thing is, all our past mistakes have been essential to our learning process, essential actually to the reasons for which we're all here. As Brother Nanamoy was saying Tuesday night, we've all paid quite a price to get where we are today. So let's make the most of the price. These learning experiences, which some oftentimes have been negative, were meant to be a means to the end, but not the end in themselves. Our Guru has said, learn the lessons from your mistakes and forget unnecessary details. We tend to go back, don't we, and relive experiences until we're actually experiencing all over the same reactions we had at the time we experienced them. It's a double dose. So this is a very important aspect in our striving to reach the goal, and particularly in our striving for God realization. If we dwell on our errors and keep berating ourselves because of them, what are we doing? Now, this is a very, very important point. We visualize failure. That's what we're doing. Visualizing failure. And that becomes real to our nervous system and subconscious mind. And since our innermost computer works like a regular computer, feeding failure thoughts into it, that dwelling on our errors and berating ourselves tells the computer that failure is our goal. I hope you realize you have a computer up here. Master said you cannot drive away darkness by concentrating on darkness. You get rid of darkness by bringing in the light. And another aspect we want to consider in this matter of self-esteem is perseverance. Master said, employ steadfastly your willpower and your patience until your dreams are materialized. Don't forget those words. And he also said of willpower, it is desire plus energy directed toward fulfillment. There is a story about Abraham Lincoln. It says he failed in business in 31. He was defeated for the state legislature in 32. He failed again in business in 34. He had a nervous breakdown in 41. He hoped to receive his party's nomination for Congress, but didn't in 43. He ran for the Senate and lost in 55. He was defeated again for the Senate in 58. And some people said he was a hopeless loser, but he became president in 1860. So if you just hang in there, you might one day be the president. So why do people give up hope? Well, it's because they don't utilize their perspective, their imagination sufficiently enough. We're living in an instant satisfaction society. And that society trains us to think that we have to have everything in the here and now. not possible. It takes time to accomplish anything in life. Time, patience, willingness, because we're always going to be experiencing all along the way to success some failures, but those help us if we look for the reason behind them and utilize them to help us on our way. They're only lessons. So if you understand the laws and how they work and what is involved, the right effort will bring success without question, without doubt. And if we give up, then we belong to those we've mentioned in the beginning, those who live far below their potential, and they know it. They are personifications of low self-esteem. And these are persons who become angry, unhappy, and think the world is responsible for their problems. So there is one more principle here that belongs to the subject of here, and that is the subject of positive thinking. It's not our own thoughts, just our own thoughts, but our environment that influences us. It's the impressions we receive from the outside, all around us, the things we hear and see. They influence us. There are literally hundreds of thousands of pictures we take in through the eyes every day. And with that comes related thoughts, and these are all stored in our subconscious mind. There is an incredible video library within us. And if we're just living a simple life, simple in the sense that we're just concentrating on the essentials, that is our goal and our duties, that's not too bad. That's fairly easy. But what do? We complicate this mechanism. We complicate the computer by feeding all sorts of things into it indiscriminately. It doesn't belong there. And this confuses our inner guidance and brings about distractions. When we sleep, the subconscious entertains itself by looking at all the videotapes that it took during the day and in the past. I want you to remember this. That subconscious entertains itself. Can you imagine such a thing? Not just during the day, but in the past. Scientific studies have shown that the subconscious will review what has happened that day, each day, 3 to 5 times. That's a very busy subconscious mind. And I'm particularly referring to those things that we take in that we could avoid, things that are not necessary to our outer and spiritual goal. So many people listen to television, watch television just before they go to sleep at night. And this is not good, because there is so much violence and other restlessness-producing things that are shown on TV. And we don't want to relive those things over and over again. So we have to think again, what is our goal? What will give us true happiness? The more we clutter our lives, our conscious and subconscious mind, the less our goals become clearly defined, and our thinking becomes muddled and unclear. We simply are delaying the success of our true endeavors, the reason for which we are here on earth. And that is why Master said to meditate deeply before you go to sleep at night. Very important. And there's another important point connected with our success in self-esteem. We have seen that it is necessary to set a goal or goals, and that God wants us to be successful. This includes positive thinking and so forth, but these goals must be in harmony with God's laws. Master said the cosmic law cannot either be stayed nor changed, and man would do well to put himself in harmony with it. That is, our being has to be working harmoniously, all faculties, on the conscious, subconscious, and superconscious levels. And if our goals are in harmony with the divine law, we will get the full support of the superconscious mind. This is a very important point. If the subconscious mind is not full of contradictory things coming from television and so on, so that it puts a wall between the conscious and superconscious mind, then it becomes our willing and ready servant. But if it's busy with all sorts of things, superconscious mind cannot get through to us. If our goals, on the other hand, are wrong, if we want to hurt people, if we're angry, if we're selfish, we're going against the divine law. And that means that there is resistance from within. And when that happens, the higher part of our being will not cooperate. We're left on our own with our self-created problems. We all know that all religions have as a foundation the basic rules of how to live in harmony with that divine law. But our modern society has succeeded in throwing out, to a large degree, those essential laws of living in harmony with God. And the result we see is a very sick society. Something will have to happen to bring it back home again. If we go against God's laws of harmony, the result is inharmony within ourselves. We're the ones that suffer, no one else. There is a subtle mechanism inbuilt in us. And if we're going against the laws of God, that inner mechanism becomes hurt, becomes injured. It's like a delicate machine. If you don't handle it properly, you break it, and it won't work for you. And the result is what? It's pain. It's mental pain, not just physical and psychological pain. And when that happens, our self-esteem vanishes. It goes away. That natural part of our soul that is inherent to our being. There's another point to be considered in regard to self-esteem, and that is love. Dr. Smiley Blanton said, "For more than 40 years I sat in my office and listened while people of all ages and classes told me of their hopes and fears. As I look back over the long, full years, one truth emerges clearly in my mind: the universal need for love. People cannot survive without love. They must have it or they will perish." To quote again from Dr. Nathaniel Brandon, "It is something of a cliché to observe that if we do not love ourselves because of low self-esteem, we cannot love anyone else. But this is only part of the picture. If we do not love ourselves, it is almost impossible to believe fully that we are loved by someone else. It is almost impossible to accept love. And a quote again from Dr. Burns, "Don't base your opinion of yourself on your achievements." That I love. Don't base your opinion of yourself on your achievements. You know, the world teaches us this. We're always trying to achieve something, isn't it true? What kind of achievements are we trying to bring to pass? Usually, those of the world. So we cannot judge by outer circumstances. Self-worth based on accomplishments is pseudo-esteem. It's not real. It isn't the genuine thing. You cannot base your self-worth on appearances, talent, fame, or fortune. Nor can love or approval add one iota to your inherent worth. Most depressed individuals are in fact much loved, but it doesn't help. At the bottom line, only your own sense of self-worth determines how you feel. Don't forget that. So, we come to another point, delusion. Because of delusion, man fell from his identity with the soul, which is the perfect image of God. Energy and consciousness descended and became locked in the body. And the result, body consciousness, ego consciousness, and everything that goes with it, that takes us away from that which we truly are. Mortality, fear, worry, and all the wretchedness that goes with these thoughts and resulting emotions. Change your thoughts, change your emotions, because you cannot have emotion without thinking first. So under the influence of this mortal consciousness, under the influence of Maya, we have a tendency to go against the laws of God and to make ourselves miserable. Because it goes against our soul, in which lies our well-being. Saint Juliana said that sin is the sharpest scourge that any soul can be stuck with. This scourge beats a man or woman completely to a pulp, makes him so entirely noxious in his own sight that after a while he judges of himself that he is worthy only to sink into Hades. And when we have seen how wretched we are, we imagine that God must be angry with us for our sins. So we tend to think if he's angry with us, he doesn't love us. Isn't this normal? If our parents are angry with us, it means they don't love us as children. I remember the story of a woman I read in a book who had an after-life experience. She was dying, and she met a presence. And with this enlightened being, she reviewed with him her entire life. And there were many things about her life she didn't like, she didn't approve of at all. But as things went on, she realized that he, the presence, was not judging her. She was judging herself. And in addition to that, she said, she discovered he had a marvelous sense of humor. So, Now we see again and again, with even our own beloved Self-Realization Fellowship members, a tendency to feel they're unworthy because they cannot do everything the lessons tell us to do. Did I hear a roar? Because they cannot meditate as much as they feel they should. And because they think, and if that's the case, they're failing, right? And if they're failing, then God and Guru don't love them. Well, someone called from Germany because he'd heard a voice saying that if he smoked one more time, that Master would withdraw from him Kriya Yoga and his love. Well, he did smoke one more time. And that was not out of defiance, but human weakness, habits, which bind us all. And he thought everything was lost. But the counselor told him that the voice was a projection of his own subconscious thinking, and that Master's love is unconditional. Don't forget that. This ties in so well with another quote from Saint Juliana. In every soul there is a godly will that has never ascended to sin, and never shall. Just as there is a beastly will in the lower part of man that cannot will any good, there is also a godly will in the upper part. This will is so good that it can never will evil, but only and always good. Good to know, isn't it? So that divine will is within, no matter how enmeshed in delusion a person may be. That perfect soul is still within us. Otherwise, there wouldn't be any negative depression when we are going against God's laws. We wouldn't know. If we didn't hurt, we wouldn't know we're doing something wrong. I think it's so comforting when we remember that Master has said evildoers are children of God, and they're loved by God just as dearly as He loves us. The only difficulty is they've gone astray, and they're suffering intensely. But God just as intensely wants to bring them back to His fold. You're all familiar with Sri Yukteswar's words, forget the past. The vanished lives of all men are dark with many shames. Human conduct is ever unreliable until man is anchored in the divine. Everything in the future will improve if you are making a spiritual effort now. Well, those of us who had the great privilege of knowing our beloved Guru were astonished that he could accept us, but he did in our imperfect state of consciousness. Even if we don't believe in ourselves, even if our esteem is so low, we still have great, powerful struggles with it. Remember that if you meditate to the best of your ability, and for as long as you can, whether it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, an hour, 3 hours, 8 hours, never mind. Do your best. And keep looking toward Him. Don't look at others and attempt to judge your own spiritual development. You can't. You can't see yourself. You don't know who you are or how great you are. Just do your best. Master said too that Maya, the delusive aspect of duality and relativity, holds no absolutes. So even though we've made mistakes, and we are also still subject to karma, That law operates only within the realm of Maya. Nice to know, isn't it? Just in this little created ball of duality that whirls in space, full of planets, it's a dream world. Someday we will penetrate beyond it and no longer be subject to the law of karma. Within that realm, everything has a beginning and an end. Master said, if you love God with all your heart, He wipes out your karma. He takes care of it. It's His business. He is the doer. We do what we can in this moment, but don't worry about that which you know not of yet. He will take care of that. He will help you on your journey. And now, dear ones, remember those vital points that we've covered tonight. It's a very important subject, self-esteem, because it affects us all. We need to have a healthy sense of self-worth all through life, to the very end. So do your best to follow Master's teachings and never mind the results. Just remember that He is looking after your needs, and He, God's emissary, will never fail you. Just keep your eye on the goal and keep moving forward.